Welcome back everyone, and a big hello to anyone tuning in for the first time. Before you see a vast assortment of figures, toys, vehicles, and even a couple of video games. Now all these have at least one thing in common, and that is going to be our subject for today, so stay tuned. Now, what do all these have in common, you might ask? Are they all vintage? No, some are modern, some are vintage. Are they hard to find or grails? Well, there might be some in there, but that's not it. What it is the chrome and gold, the ooh shiny that we're going to be talking about today. What exactly is that? Well, that is called vacuum metalizing. Vacuum metalizing is the process of evaporating metals, most commonly aluminum, inside a vacuum chamber and bonding them to a desired substrate, and in these cases, plastic. That's what gives Thunder Punch He-Man's shield that shiny. That's what makes Cyborg's armor shiny. That's what adds the gold, the chrome, and even the blue metallic colors to some of these figures that were utilized all the way from the 70s and even in toys today. Now, as you can see by the number of figures that I have here, this is arguably one of the best gimmicks ever implemented in the toy world. And it's not just limited to the toy world. As a matter of fact, I remember when I was about 18, 19 years old, I bought my first car, and back then it was the late 90s and gold plating was in. So I took my car and I paid a guy, I think $100 for him to come out and gold plate the plastic emblems on my car. Yes, money well spent if you ask me. And this has been a practice that has gone back as far as action figures and even further. You can see in the back we've got Voltron. Most of the line's legs are chrome plated. Also, if you look, the sword and the shield are chrome plated. Then we have other figures where almost the complete figure is done, like the Rock Lord's up front or the Brainiac center right. And then you have some figures where a good part of the body is done, like Cyborg or like Swoop. And then you've got some figures where just a small portion or an accessory have been chromed, like Destro's head, like Thunder Punch He-Man's shield, like the chrome accents on Mask Rhino back there. And it wasn't just limited to action figures. If you look at The Legend of Zelda, they used it on video games as well. Up first, we have Star Wars featuring the droids you're looking for. C-3PO in both his 3 3/4 and 12-inch versions, along with R2-D2. I'm using these three examples to showcase the vacuum metalizing with both gold and chrome examples. These are great examples of vacuum metalizing not only on various scales from 3 3/4 inch to 12 inch, but also the two types, gold and chrome. From Luke's sidekick to the golden one himself. Though C-3PO and R2 aren't the only ones of the line, they certainly are the most famous. And here's an up-close view of R2-D2 sporting his chrome top, accented with blue and red paint to give him that realistic astromech look. Here is C-3PO. He boasts the gold plating. It covers 100% of his body. Oftentimes, C-3PO figures from this era start to look more silver than gold due to fading from use and/or age. Figures with this much plating tend to also suffer from loose joints over time. It's very common for C-3PO's arms and legs to lose their tightness, which can affect desirability. Luckily, this one's in good shape. Here's the 12-inch version, also sporting the 100% coating of gold. There were other figures in the line that utilized the vacuum metalizing, such as the Death Star droid and various other iterations of C-3PO and R2-D2. As you can see, this guy still looks nice in gold. Some scuff marks here and there, but he's 43 years old. I'm 43 and I certainly have scuff marks myself, so not bad, kid. Since I talked about it earlier, I do want to showcase side-by-side comparison on how over time that they can lose their tightness in their joints and the coloring. As you can see, the one on the left looks a little paler than the one on the right. The one on the left is starting to look a little more silver than gold. And as you can see, his joints, if you hold them up, his legs and arms just kind of flop down. And that makes these guys extremely hard to find in good condition with the color and the tightness of joints. Up next is Voltron, Defender of the Universe, circa 1984 by Panache Place. And as you can see, this figure employs lots of chrome, namely around the lion's legs, the blaster on the canopy of the yellow lion, the ears on the blue lion, the midsection on the black lion, and his blazing sword is completely chrome, as well as his shield. So you can tell that when it comes to chrome, this figure has that on lock. Now, oftentimes when I find one of these out in the wild, their legs suffer greatly from fading, where the chrome rubs off or deteriorates and leaves behind just the white plastic underneath. Luckily, this particular example is in really good condition. The chrome is still really intact, and the blue lion's chrome looks like new. Speaking of metal machines, this brings me to some toys that are more than meets the eye. One of these is not like the other, but they are all transforming toys, and I only had one example of GoBots, so I figured, hey, I'd toss it in here too. Starting from the far right, we have Transformers Dinobots Swoop. Going left, we have GoBots Rocklord's Slimestone, followed by another Transformers Dinobots Sludge, and finally, Transformers Beast Wars Transmetal's Prowl. Man, that's a mouthful. Let's start with Swoop here. He's got lots of chrome. Roughly 70% is chrome due to his wings, since he's almost all wings. His midsection is die-cast, and he's trimmed in plastic, such as his feet, his accessories, and the bulk of his head. His head also sports a translucent upper beak, which is oftentimes lost or broken. Then we have this little fella, GoBots Rocklord Slimestone. He's virtually all chrome, save for his red painted mouth and green eyes. This guy has a perfect mix of cute and creepy, especially with those eyes and mouth. With this guy, the chrome really paid off, as he looks like a very polished hunk of silver, and that goes well with his aesthetic. Here's another Dinobots figure. This time it's Sludge. The reason I wanted to show both is that Sludge utilizes both the chrome and the gold in his design. He also sports a translucent head and neck, which is another gimmick for a future episode. Finally, this leads us to the last figure from this group, and that is Transformers Beast Wars Transmetal's Prowl. Yes, that's a mouthful. Prowl is a pretty awesome figure if you ask me. I acquired this one originally for the wife. She loves owls, namely Bubo from Clash of the Titans, and since there's not a whole lot out there featuring Bubo, that this Prowl would be a pretty good substitute. It's metallic, with the blue tinted chrome plating. It's machine like Bubo, and was also an owl, as Bubo was. Now back to the figure. It has the plating over half of its wings, its midsection, and the side tail feathers. This plating is notorious for flaking off, and you'll see that many examples of this figure suffer from the flaking, as this one is starting to itself. Here are three figures from one of my favorite toy lines ever, Kenner Superpower circa 1984-1985. In this lineup, we've got Desaad front right sporting a chrome vest and his upper torso that's either a jetpack or a torture device, or a combo of the two. Front left is Brainiac. His entire body is plated with a nice light blue tint and upper arm paint. His skull, if you will, is translucent plastic that allows you to see the circuitry that is his brain. Now, Brainiac's an amazing figure with great detail, but suffers from a similar fate as the previously mentioned 77 C-3PO, with his joints becoming increasingly loose over time and his limbs becoming fragile. Since his action requires squeezing his arms, he's known to break easily at his shoulder joint. An awesome but delicate figure. Now for the first ever figure spotlight, showcasing one of my prized possessions, 1985 Kenner Superpower Cyborg. This guy's got loads of chrome, from nearly 85% of his body to all 3 of his arm attachments. This is definitely an ooh shiny figure if there ever was one. Not to be confused for the Super Amigo Cyborg, as there's one main difference, and that's the brown paint. On the Super Amigos version, it doesn't have brown painted shoulders or brown painted upper arms or upper legs. As you can see on the Super Amigos version, the arms and the legs are 100% chrome, and it's only got the brown paint on the upper chest and on the face. Here's another mixed group of figures that I chose to represent both G.I. Joe and Masters of the Universe. Neither line really used chrome plating to any great extent. There were some exceptions, namely Destro with his chrome head, and another figure was the Melloway Super Trooper, who sported chrome-plated chest armor, shield, helmet, and weapon. That's not to say there weren't other instances, but those 2 are the major ones that I can think of off the top of my head. Now, the Destro in the middle is from a modern line called G.I. Joe Classified Series. It's a 6-inch scale line of figures that are similar to that of Marvel Legends or Star Wars Black Series. I included him just to show the difference in approach to chrome options, whereas Chrome Dome isn't plated, rather it's painted and not vacuum metalized like his vintage counterpart. Up next is Thunder Punch He-Man from the Masters of the Universe line by Mattel. As with G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe didn't utilize vacuum metalizing as other toy lines. There are some 2000X figures with metallic armors, but as far as vintage goes, I recall Flying Fist He-Man with his armor and shield to be one of the only other instances of this process. Terraclaw Skeletor has a shiny-ish chest armor, but I believe that employed more of a metallic paint. I could be wrong though, so I didn't want to include it in this segment. And with this Thunder Punch He-Man, they only utilized the chrome with his shield, the H on his chest, and the outline of his chest armor. Here we are with Mask Rhino. I've always loved this toy line, though it was never one I had many of as a child. I did have a friend who had a massive collection of them. We had lots of fun times with Boulder Hill, Rhino, Thunderhawk, and many others. I always felt this toy line kind of married the aspects of both Transformers and G.I. Joe, in terms that its main stars were humans, but the vehicles they utilize have much more going on under the hood with some transforming aspects. Vehicles that turn into mobile command centers, motorcycles that fly, jeeps that turn into boats, all sorts of cool things. And as you can see, this truck has its share of chrome. And this brings me to the end of this episode, finishing off with the vacuum metalizing in video games. One of the most well-known examples is the Gold Legend of Zelda cartridge. They continued this feature when making the sequel, The Adventures of Link. Now, both of these games have gray counterparts, with the gray version being marginally more rare than the gold, as they were re-releases once the games had become popular. Now, these aren't the only 2, as there was at least one other vintage one that I can think of, and it was not an officially licensed product by Nintendo, and that game was Micro Machines, published by Camerica and licensed by Codemasters. Lastly, there was a modern Capcom reissue of DuckTales for NES released that was an ultra-limited gold cartridge. I want to thank you all for coming by and checking out my video. If you liked what you saw, make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated with any new videos. I plan to be putting out 2 or more videos a week. Thanks again, and feel free to comment below any suggestions you have for future videos. This is EF Toybox signing off. See you next time.